Aloha, Ohana and friends. It's time for Tales with Tutu again. And this time I'm going to bring you a tale about friendship. A friendship is one that can be fostered amongst any age, any level, any person, animals included, especially animals. This one is called AMOS and BORIS. And it's written, again, by William Steig. Go figure. He's written lots of good books, lots of good authorship, of good material and good language. The language in this book will not only extend a child's vocabulary, but yours as well. AMOS and BORIS is a story of true friendship and what it means to be a good friend. So, here we go. Once upon a time, AMOS, a mouse, lived by the ocean. He loved the smell of the sea air. He loved to hear the surf sounds, the bursting breakers, the backwashes, the rolling pebbles. He loved to walk on the beach up and down. He thought a lot about the ocean. And he wondered what it would be like to be in the faraway places on the other side of that water. And one day he thought he should build a boat. So he started building his boat on the beach. He worked on it in the daytime, and at night he studied navigation. When the boat was finished, he loaded it with cheese, biscuits, acorns, honey, wheat germ, 2 barrels of fresh water, a compass, a sextant, a telescope, a saw, a hammer, nails, some wood, in case repairs should be necessary. And he also included a needle and thread for the mending of torn sails, and various other necessities such as bandages, iodine, a yo-yo, and some playing cards. On the 6th of September, with a very calm sea, he waited till it was high tide, and it had almost reached his boat. And then, using his savage strength, he managed to push the boat into the water, climb aboard, and sail. The rodent, for that was the boat's name, proved to be very well made and very well suited to sea. And AMOS, after one miserable day of seasickness, proved to be a very natural sailor and very well suited to the ship. He was enjoying his trip immensely. It was beautiful weather. Day and night he moved up and down, up and down, up and down on waves as big as mountains. He was full of wonder, full of enterprise, and full of love for life. Well, one night, on a phosphorescent sea, he laid on the deck of his little ship and marveled at the sight of some whales spouting luminous water. Then later, continued to lie on the deck of his boat, gazing at the immense starry sky, and this tiny mouse, AMOS, this little speck of a living thing, thought, here I am living in this vast universe, and I'm so tiny and so small, and yet I feel thoroughly akin to all of it. Overwhelmed by the beauty and mystery of everything, AMOS started rolling over and over and hugging himself and rolling himself in delight, hugging himself, and he kept rolling and rolling, and plop! He rolled right off the boat and fell right in the water. Help! He squeaked. He grabbed desperately for the rodent, but it evaded his gasp and went on bowling along under full sail, and it sailed completely out of sight. Help! Look at me. Here I am. Where was he? In the middle of the immense ocean, thousands of miles from the nearest shore, with no one else in sight as far as the eye could see, and not even so much as a stick of driftwood to hold on to. What should I do? Should I try to swim home? Or should I just try to stay afloat? He might swim a mile, but he'd never swim 1,000 miles. So he decided to try to keep afloat, treading water and hoping that something, but who knows what, or who would come along to save him. But what if it was a shark, or some big fish, or a horse mackerel turned up? Excuse me. What was he supposed to do to protect himself? He didn't know. Well, morning came, as it always does, and I'll tell you what, AMOS was getting terribly tired. He was a very small, very cold, very wet, and a very worried mouse. There was still nothing in sight but the empty sea. And then, if things weren't bad enough, it began to rain. At last the rain stopped, and the noonday sun gave him a little bit of cheer and warmth in the vast loneliness. But his strength was starting to give out. Oh, I wonder what it's going to be like to drown. Will it take very long? Will it feel awful? Will my soul go to mouse heaven? Will there be other mice there? And just as he was asking himself these dreadful, dreadful questions, a huge head burst through the surface of the water and loomed over him.
Hey, what sort of fish are you? You must be one of a kind.
I'm not a fish. I'm a mouse, which is a mammal, the highest form of life, I'll have you know, and I live on land.
Holy clam and cuttlefish. I'm a mammal myself, but I live in the sea. You can call me Boris.
Well, Amos introduced himself to Boris and how he came to be there in the middle of the ocean. The whale said he would be happy to take Amos to the ivory coast of Africa, where he happened to be headed anyway, to attend a meeting of the whales from all the 7 seas. But Amos said he'd had enough adventure to last him a lifetime. He only wanted to go back home and hoped the whale wouldn't mind going out of his way to take him there.
Well, not only would I not mind, I'd consider it a privilege.
What other whale in all the world has ever had a chance to get to know such a strange creature as you? Please, climb aboard, Amos. And Amos got on Boris's back. Are you sure you're a mammal? You smell more like a fish. But Boris ignored that and just kept swimming along with Amos the mouse on his back. What a relief to be safe, to be secure and warm again. He lay down in the sun, being worn to a frazzle, and pretty soon, little tiny Amos was sound asleep. Then all of a sudden, splash! He was back in the water again, wide awake, spluttering and splashing about. Boris had forgotten for a moment that he had a passenger on his back when he had to sound. When he realized his mistake, he surfaced so quickly that, boom, he sent Amos somersaulting, tail over whiskers, high into the air. Hitting the water hurt, and crazy with rage, Amos screamed and punched at Boris until he remembered he owed his life to this great big whale. So quietly climbed back on, and from then on, whenever Boris needed to sound, he warned Amos in advance and got his okay. So whenever Boris sounded, Amos took a swim and waited patiently. Swimming along, sometimes at great speed, sometimes slowly, and sometimes leisurely, and sometimes resting and just chatting and exchanging ideas, or sometimes just stopping to sleep. It took them a week to reach Amos's home shore. Well, I'm going to tell you, during that time, they developed a beautiful, beautiful friendship. They had great admiration for each other. Boris admired the tiny delicacy of that mouse, the daintiness, the light touch, the small voice, the gem-like radiance. And Amos enjoyed and admired the bulk and the grandeur and the power and the purpose and the rich voice of this beautiful animal and the abounding friendliness of his friend the whale. They became the closest of possible friends. They told each other about their lives, their ambitions. They shared their deepest secrets with each other. Now, the whale was very curious about life on land, and he was sorry that he could never experience. And Amos was fascinated by the whale's accounts of what went on deep under the ocean and down the sea. Amos sometimes enjoyed running up and down on the whale's back for exercise, and when he was hungry, he ate the plankton on the whale's back. The only thing he missed was fresh, unsalty water. Well, time finally came to say goodbye. They were at Amos's shore.
I wish we could be friends forever. We will be friends forever, but we just can't be together. You must live on the land, and I must live at the sea. But you know what, Amos? I'll never forget you.
And you can be sure I'll never forget you, Boris. I will always be grateful to you for saving my life. And I want you to remember that if you ever need my help, I'll be more than glad to give it.
How could he ever possibly help me, Boris?
Amos didn't know either, but he knew he was willing to try to help his friend. Well, the whale couldn't take Amos all the way to the land. They said their last goodbyes, and Amos dived off Boris's back and swam ashore. From the top of a cliff, Boris spouted twice and then disappeared. Boris laughed to himself, swimming down to the bottom of the sea. How could that little mouse ever help me? Little as he is, he's all heart. I love him, and I'll miss him terribly. Well, Boris went on to the conference at the ivory coast of Africa and then went back to a life of wailing about, while Amos returned to his life of mousing around, and they both were very happy. Many, many, many years after the incidents I've just described, when Amos was no longer a very young mouse and Boris was no longer a very young whale, there occurred one of the worst storms of the century, Hurricane Yetta. And it just so happened that Boris, the whale, was tossed about in that hurricane and finally flung ashore by a tidal wave that stranded him on the very shore where Amos happened to make his home. And it also just happened that when the storm had cleared up and Boris was lying high and dry on the sand, losing that wonderful moisture in his skin, the hot sun was needing to be desperately back in the water, Amos decided to take a walk down to the beach to see how much damage Hurricane Yetta had done. Now, of course, Amos and Boris recognized each other at once, and I don't have to tell you how these old friends felt at meeting again in this desperate, desperate situation. Amos rushed towards Boris, but Boris could only look at his dear friend. "Amos, help me! I think I'll die if I don't get back in the water soon." Amos looked at Boris in an agony of pity. He realized he had to do something very fast, and he had to think very fast about what it was he had to do, and suddenly, phew, he was gone. "Oh, I'm afraid my friend won't be able to help me, much as he wants to do something. What could such a little fellow do?" Well, just as Amos had once felt all alone in the middle of the ocean, Boris felt now lying alone on the shore, and he was sure he was going to die. And just as he was preparing to die, he looked over his shoulder one last time, and he saw his friend Amos come running back with two of the biggest elephants he had ever seen. Without wasting any time, these two good-hearted elephants got to pushing with all their might at Boris's huge body until it turned over and over, breaded with sand, and started rolling down towards the sea. Amos was standing on the top of the biggest elephant's head and shouting and jumping up and down and squeaking and yelling instructions, but no one heard him. But he was there. In a few minutes, Boris was already in the water with the waves washing at him, and he was feeling the wonderful wetness. "Oh, you have to be out of the sea to know how really good it is to be in it. Well, that is if you're a whale." And pretty soon, Boris was able to wiggle and wiggle and wiggle deeper and deeper and deeper until he was into the water once again. He looked back at Amos, his dear, dear friend on the elephant's head. Tears were rolling down the great whale's cheeks. The tiny mouse had tears in his eyes, too. "Goodbye, dear friend, and thank you." "Goodbye, dear friend." And Boris spouted twice and disappeared in the waves. They knew they might never meet again, but they also knew they would never, ever forget each other. Amos and Boris by William Steig. Friends are good, friends are nice. You love 'em once, you love 'em twice, and after that, you love 'em thrice, 'cause friends are nice. Friends are good, friends are nice. You love 'em once, you love 'em twice, and after that, you love 'em thrice, 'cause friends are nice. Friends are great to have. I also have another one that I do with the kids called 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, all my friends are here with me. Friends, 1, 2, 3, all my friends are here with me. You're my friend, and you're my friend, and you're my friend, and you're my friend. Friends, 1, 2, 3, all my friends are here with me. Have a great day, and remember to share a story and a song with a friend you haven't met yet. Aloha, a hui ho.